The Book of Mormon introduces the idea that a group of Israelites, the Nephites and Lamanites, were led by prophets and migrated to the Americas, where they built great civilizations before falling into decline. The Nephites and Lamanites were believed by Mormons to have been direct descendants of Israelites who left Jerusalem around 600 BC. After being driven out of New York, Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois, often violently, the Mormons knew they had to find a place beyond the reach of U.S. law. It was technically Mexican land, part of Alta California and the larger northern Mexico region. After Joseph Smith was killed in 1844, Brigham Young led about 70,000 Mormons west. Welcome back to In Search of Tontonteac. In 1847, they settled in the Salt Lake Valley, which was part of Mexico at the time. They were trying to escape U.S. law and persecution and intended to start their own theocratic nation, called Deseret. During their westward migration, the U.S. was at war with Mexico. The war ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, and the U.S. took over all of California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and parts of other states. So just like that, the Mormon settlements in Salt Lake suddenly became U.S. territory. The Mormons petitioned the U.S. government to create their independent state, Deseret. The government said no, but instead created the Utah Territory in 1850. Brigham Young was appointed territorial governor, so while not sovereign, they were given heavy control over their affairs. During the Mexican-American War, there were no official land deeds. They simply settled it, divided it up amongst themselves, and started farming. They built irrigation, roads, and cities. As a matter of fact, Salt Lake City was master planned with wide streets and lots for everyone. But was it already there? Fremont and ancestral Puebloan ruins are found all over Utah, including near the Salt Lake. Spanish and Mexican explorers like Escalante and Dominguez in 1776 had already recorded native settlements and trade routes around the region. And then, of course, the older stories of the Seven Cities. The Seven Cities, a legendary place rumored to be rich in gold, were a topic of fascination for early Spanish explorers. What if these cities weren't just myth, but part of a larger, hidden history that the Mormons stumbled upon? Did the Mormon settlers really build from scratch? Or were they tapping into infrastructure, roads, and ruins that already existed? Of course they did. We have already seen in a previous episode that the Mormons were utilizing native cities and infrastructure. While the Mormons were building their new lives, they were also encountering remnants of old ones, ruins and infrastructure that seemed to predate their arrival. Fremont and ancestral Puebloan ruins are found all over Utah, including near the Salt Lake. Spanish and Mexican explorers like Escalante and Dominguez in 1776 had already recorded native settlements and trade routes around the region. Parowan, Manatee, and others were settled near known native or earlier Spanish sites. There are even Mormon journal entries and oral histories describing ruins of stone cities already present when they arrived. We crossed ruins of a former city, stone walls yet remaining. None could say who built it. With Lord Woodruff's journal from April 1850. The remnants of ancient cities built by unknown hands prove that America was once populated by a civilized race now extinct. Parley P. Pratt. We have the remains of cities that have been built by a people who were as much acquainted with the arts of civilization as we are today. Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 9, page 311. Something odd happened around 1846, after the Mormons were removed from several states and persecuted against by the United States government. Their bitterness towards the United States government began to change. The United States government asked for help against the Mexicans in the Mexican-American War. The Mormons formed a Mormon battalion of about 500 men. They marched from all the way from Iowa to California, in which they helped build infrastructure and roads. They never actually fought in battle, but they did get military pay, supplies, and safety for their families. After the dust settled from the Mexican-American War, the LDS Church began locking in their claims legally, buying land from the U.S. government, filing under the Homestead Act, even using church corporations and trusted members to gain control of massive stretches of the West. Interestingly, in 1857, the United States government believed that Brigham Young was building a theocracy in Utah. President James Buchanan sent the U.S. Army to invade Utah. This began the Utah War of 1857. It was mostly a Cold War, but Mormons burned their own towns and prepped from real battle. Was the burning of the Mormon towns a requirement of the United States government, or was it intentionally done as a means of war? The U.S. government might have had a vested interest in erasing or concealing evidence of ancient civilizations that could challenge the mainstream narrative of history. If there were indeed ancient ruins tied to an older, possibly non-indigenous or non-European civilization, such as Teguayo or maybe Quivira or other pre-Columbian settlements, the destruction of these structures could have been a strategic move to maintain control over the narrative of America's past. After the war, early Mormon towns used a communal model. Land was distributed based on need and contribution, not on wealth. Church leaders had centralized control, so the towns were planned, efficient, and loyal. They established over 400 settlements across the West, often in harsh conditions, but they thrived. They created ZCMI, Zion's Cooperative Mercantile Institution, the first department store in the U.S., invested in railroads, banks, mills, and canals. Every city they built had a bishop's storehouse, meeting house, farmland, and economic hub. But here's the strange part. These Mormon cities often appear right where the old maps placed the 7 cities. Salt Lake wasn't just a settlement, it may have been a resettlement. Were the Mormons rediscovering a forgotten past, or were they unknowingly rewriting it? Stay tuned, we got more to come.